Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. 24 hours after the budget, how does the government respond to criticism? How does it respond to comments? Those are the two issues I shall raise today with Power and Coal Minister Piyush Goyal. Mr. Goyal, let me start with two broad impressions of the budget and get you to respond to them before I come to specifics. The first impression is that the budget is a mass of details, but it doesn't have a single clear central idea. If there is a single idea, what is it?
This government, from the time we got sworn in on 26th May 2014, has had one agenda, one central theme, and that is to take the benefits of growth, meet the aspirations of the person at the bottom of the pyramid. Pandit Dindayal Upadhyay, our ideologue of our party, had articulated the concept of Antyodaya. And Prime Minister Vajpayee, in his term, focused a lot on Antyodaya. He was always very, very careful that we have to get the people and their lives improved who have been facing the worst situation.
So your idea is the uplift
for the last
poorest.
2 years. Our idea has steadfastly been, and it continues in this budget, to reach out to the poorest of the poor, make their lives better.
This in a sense leads to the second broad impression people have of this budget. As the finance minister was delivering it, we heard him lay a lot of stress on Manrega, Aadhaar, DBT, farmers, the rural poor. And people said the focus that the budget gives has shifted away from the new middle class, which was at the center of Mr. Modi's election campaign, to the poor. To many this sounded like a Congress, not a BJP budget. How do you respond to that?
Not at all. Well, a lot of corporates who interacted with me yesterday on several channels, including yours, were in fact complimenting the budget for the fact that this gives a thrust to rural spending, gives a demand push, and gets their businesses back in shape. So really, this is an ecosystem in which every section of society has its own role. To my mind, this is one budget which has touched 125 crore lives. Every segment of society benefits tremendously from different aspects.
I don't deny that it touches on everyone's lives. Budgets have to do that ipso facto. But it seems to have its thrust, focus and direction on the poor, the new middle class, a concept that Mr. Modi had coined when he was fighting his election campaign. That area between the middle class and the poor, that has disappeared. There's very little in the budget for them, for their aspirations and their ambitions.
Well, budget is a continuing exercise. Of course, this is the third time a finance minister has presented a budget. Earlier budgets have given a lot of thrust, 50,000 rupee increase in the exemption limit, another 50,000 added in the interest on housing, 50,000 added in ATC. This time the rent exemption increased from 24 to 60,000. The deduction 2,000 to 5,000.
But that's
rebate,
it.
So many
but
things.
That's it. Just look at it. A 0.5% agricultural cess for every consumer. That hits the middle class hardest. An infrastructure cess on cars. The EPF withdrawal of taxation on EPF withdrawals is now coming into being.
Let's assess
all of those.
These are the only three things that everybody seems to be interested in. First of all, the service tax. 0.5%. The other day we were calculating. In a common person's monthly budget, this won't have an impact of 20-25 rupees, 0.1. He's given far more than that away in several ways.
It all depends on how much the person consumes.
You can take anybody, even Mukesh Ambani will not be able to consume more pizzas than a certain number. So it's end of the day, every human being has a consumption level. So I think the impact of it on the middle class, it cannot be more than 25-30 rupees per capita at any point of time. We've tried a lot of analysis in my office just out of...
You've actually sat and worked this out?
We just thought as an interest, let's say what happens, how much clothing, person who earns 30,000-40,000 rupees a month, how much would he spend on clothing, on food,
Can I interrupt and ask why you did that? Did you do it because you yourselves were scared that the focus is moving to the poor and Mr. Modi's new middle class may feel they've been ignored?
Not at all. This was being talked on many channels and I was wondering if that 0.5%, what will be the impact? Let's see. I told one of my colleagues, what would be your budget, try and work it out. And it didn't come to more than 25.
Do you know what people say? People say that this is Mr. Modi's answer to Rahul Gandhi's suit boot ki sarkar. This is Mr. Modi's defense against a charge that was beginning to hurt the government.
Well, Prime Minister Modi and his government have steadfastly worked on that agenda which I mentioned to you. For us, the poor, for us, the person who's been deprived for years of the fruits of development, the people in rural India who've not got electricity 68 years after independence. People don't have homes, people don't have toilets. These have been the focus for the last 21 months. After all, what was Jan Dhan? Was it not to give financial inclusion to the common man? What is Mudra? It's to encourage entrepreneurship and get the person out of moneylenders' clutches. What are the 3 social sector schemes? Only to help them come up in life. Our effort in a continuum have been focused on those.
I'll accept your point that your focus hasn't changed. You've always been focused on Antyodaya and the uplift of the poor. I leave it to the audience to judge whether they still want to believe whether the new middle class that Mr. Modi had championed in his campaign has now been forgotten. Let's leave that to the audience.
More thing. The fact that he has stuck to the fiscal consolidation path obviously means lower inflation, lower interest rates.
Let me come to that.
Which also impact the middle class.
Let me come to that, because I want to come now to specifics. And before I come to the fiscal consolidation, I want to begin with something that was perhaps the most catchy promise in the budget. Mr. Jaitley said that he will double the income of farmers in 5 years. Dr. Manmohan Singh says that's impossible. Praful Patel says it's unimaginable. So I want to ask you a simple question. How is he going to do it in 5 years?
Well, with due respect to Dr. Manmohan Singh, he is the former Prime Minister. There are so many impossible things that he could not do that Prime Minister Modi has done. In 10 years, he could not auction the coal mines. We've been able to do it in 3 months.
You're not answering my question.
I'll answer that also, but I just want to give the thinking behind our government. We do a lot of things which earlier governments could not even imagine. They could not take electricity to these 18,500 villages because they were so difficult.
I'm asking a specific question.
Now, as regards the farmer income, the reality is that it's the income which we are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of irrigation being given a big thrust, water being available, productivity will improve, and electricity are a focus area. We want to make sure they get adequate electricity. Another major area
of that will double income in 5 years.
All of these things add to his bottom line. I hope you're not mixing up income with MSP.
Well, I'm
Please be very clear.
I'm not.
The MSP is the sale price.
Mr. Goyal,
if the inputs are kept under control.
Mr. Goyal, I'm quoting the finance minister, and I'll tell you why people question, in fact doubt, that he can double income in 5 years, because that means you have to increase farmers' income by an average of 15% per year. Even if you assume
income by 15%.
Absolutely.
I think the need of the hour.
No, it may be the need.
We have to do it and we must do it.
But it is the need. I'm questioning how you will do it. Let me finish the question, then you answer it. To double farmers' income in 5 years, you have to on average increase it by 15% per year. Even if you assume agricultural productivity grows by 3% a year, which you know and I know is 200% more than it's grown in the last 2 years, you're still left having to push up the prices at which farmers sell their products by 12% a year. That is going to fuel inflation madly.
Sadly, Karan, you are such a renowned economist yourself. You're missing the point.
Which is?
Which is, A, the last 2 years cannot be the benchmark, obviously, because the last 2 years were monsoon deficient years.
But it's the challenge.
Point 1. Point 2, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, all our BJP states have demonstrated that they could do a significant increase in productivity going beyond the national average.
But they also didn't double farmers' income in 5 years.
May I complete? Third, it's a question of whether you're able to control costs. It's a question of whether water reaches there and you get into multi-cropping. What is the output per acre of the farmer that you're able to get, and whether you're able to change his cropping pattern to get more value-added products.
Even if you do all of that,
with all of that,
it's extremely unlikely you'll double his income in 5 years. That's the problem people ask.
You know, when I launched the LED program and I said I'll do 77 crore LED bulbs in 3.5 years, everybody ridiculed me. And yesterday we've touched 7 crores yesterday evening in 11 months.
I heard you say it on TV last night.
And we'll do 77 crores before the
But you know the language you use. Everyone said you've done a miracle. You're expecting Mr. Jaitley to do another miracle. It's actually
not a miracle.
Doubling will be a miracle.
Karan, it's no miracle. It only needs sincerity of purpose. It needs some vision, which Prime Minister has in abundance. It needs leadership for getting all of these things done on the ground. Now look at it like
this. I'll explain
at
the moment what you have is a lot of conviction and boastful talk. It's the delivery people question.
You may find it boastful. I only find it as a commitment which we are expected to deliver, and we will deliver. Right. Let me give you a small example how things can be different. Maharashtra spends 70,000 crores in the last 10 years before Devendra Fadnavis on irrigation, not 1 hectare got irrigated. Devendra Fadnavis brought in a simple intervention called Jal Yukt Shibir. It's small check dams, cost 1 lakh, 2 lakh rupees at local areas. 3 times there is rainfall, and it helps the farmer get water for the
But the question is a different one. The question is a different one. Can this lead, whether you add another 10 measures to it, to doubling farmers' income?
Of course.
Okay.
Why not?
Let me
Look at it like this. If I procure seeds in bulk, like I did the LEDs, the cost of seed can come down. If I give him adequate water, his distress will reduce. With the new crop insurance scheme, he is assured that if there is a problem, he'll be taken care of. All of these add up. His interest subvention, we've added 15,000.
Let's not get stuck on this point. All I'll do is to point out to the audience there are about 4 ifs that have to be fulfilled. If you fulfill them, you have the conviction, you have the determination. So if you do it, you believe you can double farmers' incomes. Let's see whether that actually happens. Let's come to the
we are here, you are here, I am here.
Let's come to the second achievement that Mr. Jaitley was proud of and which everyone has welcomed. The fact that he's been able, first of all, to achieve this year's fiscal deficit target of 3.9% and that he's stuck to next year's target of 3.5%. Now this year, he's achieved on the back of a huge oil bonanza. Next year is predicated on 99,000 from spectrum sales, which is 76% more than last year, and being able to earn 56,000 from disinvestment, which is just over 30,000 more than this year. If he fails on those 2 counts, the 3.5% target goes out of the window. So how credible is the 3.5?
There are 2 aspects to it. First, why both of these figures are credible, let me take a short point to explain it. Spectrum sales obviously is taken a larger figure because last year's sales also entail a certain payment which he'll get this year. So the 1,09,000 crore of last year, some amount was paid down payment, the rest is paid each year.
And that's accounted
So that's accounted for in this year.
That's clear.
Second, he's got some additional spectrum which is slated to be auctioned. Ravi Shankar Prasad has already started working on that. The TRAI has made their recommendations. That will add another bonanza in terms of spectrum proceeds.
As I hear you, I'm ready to accept that the 99,000 to be realized from spectrum sales looks possible.
Because of the last year edition.
The question is the disinvestment, and I'll tell you why.
I'll explain that.
Let me ask the question, then you explain.
Sure.
This year your target was 69,500. You'll be lucky if you end up with even 25,000.
We've already crossed 25. We've already crossed.
The minister in his comments after the budget in the afternoon said he'll reach 23, 24. But
no, we've crossed 25.
Okay, I'll accept that.
We've crossed 25.
The reason the minister wasn't able to do better, he said, was because the stock market was performing poorly. Now, I put this to you.
Yeah.
If the stock market
Which minister said that?
Mr. Jaitley,
Mr. Jaitley,
in his after-budget press conference. Now, I put this question to you. If you're going to have to achieve 56,000 next year, and the stock market is performing as it has this year, then you have to be pretty certain in your mind you will go ahead with this investment even if the stock market is down. Are you prepared to do that?
I'll explain to you. Mr. Jaitley did mention about the stock market, one aspect. There's a second aspect he probably remained to be mentioned, was the amendment to the Prevention of Corruption Act. This government is committed to strategic sales also, particularly the loss-making units, and a lot of things where government has no business to be in business. And we believe in that very strongly. Unfortunately, the strategic sales last year could not happen because if you recall, in the UPA regime, they tried to fix a few of the bureaucrats for having done some strategic sales in the valuation and stuff like that. We are bringing an amendment to Prevention of Corruption Act that bona fide actions will not be questioned. That amendment is under a select committee, which report is expected, and we shall.
And you're saying when that amendment happens,
it helps us to start strategic sales. Balco is left.
But remember, the question asked remains: will you do strategic sales? More importantly, will you do disinvestment if the stock market continues to perform poorly? That's the obstacle you have to overcome.
Well, we'll play it by the year. One has to. Any responsive government has to keep calibrating its response to stock market conditions and the need of the FISC to get more funds. But there's a third element which I must mention to you. In the 4 schemes that is announced, the window, compliance window, the dispute resolution window for retrospective tax affected companies, the window for resolving by arbitration those cases which are pending for litigation, he's only factored a very, very modest sum of 15,000 crores. My own sense is that he'll exceed that by a big stretch. There are a lot of other similar...
In other words, if you don't realize on disinvestment what you hope to, you've got a backup. There. You've got a backup.
Also, he's very much underestimated the coal sales. I expect him to get at least 8,000-10,000 crores.
So you have sufficient backup to meet the target.
He's been very conservative with his numbers.
The critical question is this. What does Mr. Jaitley expect will be the international oil price as you go through the year beginning 1st April? It clearly will not be $30 a barrel. Now, what is expected to be?
Information from OPEC or any
No one has inside information, but it's widely expected that it might stay at 30 for the first 6 months of this year. People expect it to go up fairly sharply after that.
Well, we'll play it by the year, and of course, as you may be aware...
So that's an imponderable. That is an imponderable.
Not at all. I'll explain why it's not an imponderable. Just like when the prices fell, the lag effect was there and we were not able to pass on for quite some time. Similarly, when the prices go up, there'll be a lag effect, we'll have forward contracts. So I don't see any great stress in the current year on that account. Should that still happen, we'll play it by the year.
Okay, let me bring up one more issue to do with the fiscal deficit target of next year before I move on. Now, the minister has fixed it at 3.5%, but at the same time he's announced that he's setting up a committee to review the FRBM Act. And many people ask, is there a danger that this review could lead to a dilution of the commitment to 3.5?
Not at all. And he has very clearly articulated that. This year's commitment is absolutely firm, 3.5. He's set out his budgets and the targets, all of them in black and white. What he has mentioned is that there's been a debate that should we be fixated on one number or should there be a range? It could be 3.4 to 3.6.
But that will be for next year.
It'll all be for the next year. For this year, he's not amending.
There's no possible revision of this year.
Absolutely. The mere fact that in such a challenging time, he made all efforts to meet his planned expenditure, control his non-planned expenditure, and meet 3.9 fisc for last year. Deficit speaks volumes for his ability and his wonderful work.
Let's then come to a third area where the finance minister, at least in principle, although only partially, has fulfilled a promise he made last year, and that is to start reducing the corporate taxation from 30 to 25. But the problem is he's only done it for two entities and very partially. Firstly, he's done it for new manufacturing outfits that come into being post-April the 1st. They will pay 25% plus surcharge plus cess. And he's done it for very, very small companies with a turnover under 5%. They will now pay...
Under 5 crores.
Up 5 crores.
And not their number of companies.
Well, and they will now pay 29% plus surcharge plus cess. But there's a vast majority in between who will continue to pay 30%. Why is he ignoring that?
Not in between, the larger companies.
Oh, why is he ignoring them?
Very clearly, one has to see what the international situation is, and he does need revenue to run his government. But at the same time, kindly recall what he said last year. He said we'll be having to calibrated manner phase out the exemptions.
Over 4 years.
Over 4 years, and that's the period in which we'll gradually
Can I come back there? Can I come back there?
One minute. Most of the exemptions had a sunset clause. None of them is having a sunset in this year. Many of them have a sunset clause in 2017, about which he has articulated in his budget speech. So very clearly, this year there was no room for a reduction, because it would have meant the exemption would have to be retrospectively withdrawn. And I think we have made it very clear we are not going to do any retrospective amendment.
I can understand the concern with sunset clauses, and I respect your concern about it as well. The problem is this: you now have only 3 budgets left. The last budget in 2019 will be just 2 months before an election. I doubt if that's going to be the moment when you do it. Which means that in 2 budgets, 2017 and 2018, you have to actually bring these large companies from 30% down to 25%. Have you left yourself too little time?
Not at all, Karan. If we want, we can even do it in 1 budget. What about 2? The question is, once the exemptions get sorted out, and in any case the effective rate of tax collection is under 25%, the government itself is a zero-sum game for the government. So once the exemptions are in his, as he rightly said, in a calibrated manner, reach their sunset clause, he could even do it overnight.
Can I ask you this? You keep saying he can do it overnight. You keep saying he can do it overnight, he can do it in a month. Are you giving me an assurance to the extent you can? Because you're not finance minister. That
I cannot give any assurance. Only the finance minister can do it.
Let me finish.
Since you said that you have left yourself little time, I said hypothetically.
No, I'm not asking for an assurance to do it in a month. I'm asking you for an assurance that before you demit office, you will have brought down corporate tax for everyone to 25.
I'm not the person to make these assurances. Either the Prime Minister can make an assurance or the Finance Minister.
Is there a danger that might not happen?
Well, I think everything that the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister have said so far, we have stuck to achieving all of the commitments we've made.
There's one
You
commitment.
take your own.
You see, I'll tell you why I asked. Because there was one commitment that was made in your manifesto. I admit it wasn't a budget commitment, that you would increase MSP not just by the actual price of and cost of production, but by 50% more. You haven't even bothered to fulfill it. And people say, just as that's a forgotten promise, might reducing corporate tax become a forgotten promise because time's running out?
Well, may I inform you that we have met each and every one of the recommendations of the CACP. The Swaminathan Commission, MS Swaminathan Commission had raised this issue. It's a commitment that the BJP has made, and the government is led by the BJP. So I'm quite sure that that commitment also we shall be working towards, and possibly there you find a signal to this doubling of income of the farmers.
That might help you double income of farmers, and you're also saying it's possible this commitment to increase MSP to the actual cost plus 50% could be fulfilled before you leave office.
3.5 years more.
All right, that's very interesting. Now, one measure that took people completely by surprise was to create a small window for the disclosure of undisclosed income with a 45% penalty and tax and with complete immunity from prosecution. Isn't this proof that last year's black money scheme was a failure, which is why you're having to repeat it with even more attractive terms this time around?
If I remember correctly, the last time around, that was for foreign undisclosed accounts.
Well, there's no one who said that this is not foreigners are excluded.
And
this undisclosed money
and
could
that
be
had a
as well.
certain window, and in which whatever the amounts came in and were disclosed. In this compliance window, all that is said is that in case you have overlooked giving out any of your tax return numbers correctly, or you've overlooked any of the incomes, there's a limited window in which you can bring that to tax at a rate which is 50% more than the normal tax.
But actually, it's a rate that is 15% less than last year's black money rate. Last year, the black money tax and penalty was 60%. This year, the tax and penalty is 45%. And I put it to you, you've dropped it by 15% to lure people because last time you didn't succeed in getting them. Now you're trying one more time with a better offer.
Well, that was for foreign-based accounts. This one is applicable to all the Indian
But foreign-based accounts aren't excluded.
I'm not so sure, but I
in the budget
would like to check that out because I haven't focused on that. This is the first time this question has been posed.
I want to ask you one more question about money before I move to other subjects. The finance minister, and this was widely expected, has announced a recapitalization of banks of 25,000 crore, although there are many who say this is too little, it should have been 10, 15,000 more. The question I want to ask you is, what is he proposing to do about banks' non-performing assets, which Jayant Sinha, in an interview to CNBC yesterday, said could be as large as 8 lakh crore, beyond permitting FDI and asset reconstruction companies. What else has he offered or suggested?
Well, as you might be well aware, in recent times you must have heard a lot of these stressed assets have been up for sale. We are finding transfer of ownership of many of these assets. Just a couple of days back, I read some large cement assets were changing hands. There's talk about a steel company which changed hands about 10 days, 15 days ago. So I think this has put tremendous pressure on the entire system to try and resolve all these assets, the non-performing assets.
But what is the finance?
These are, after all, a legacy that we inherited.
But what steps is the finance minister taking?
This has been happening for several years, that banks just kept evergreening. And we thought enough is enough. There's time. We sorted out this old mess. But allowed banks to function professionally. But that's what I'm asking.
What steps are you taking to sort it out? Because I'm not sure I can see them.
It's not for the government to sort it out. It's the banks who lend this money. Banks are being empowered to take decisions to sort out, resolve these NPA issues to the best of their ability and move forward.
Are you saying you've passed the buck to the banks? This is for them.
Passed the buck. It was never our buck. It's a buck that the lending was done by the bank and their boards.
They're government-controlled banks.
Yes, of course, but the lending was done by the bank. Only they can resolve it. Government cannot come in and nationalize those. Can I put you a point
that Mr. Chidambaram made to me last week in an interview for this program? He said an asset reconstruction company, and your government in this budget has permitted 100% FDI in ARCs, is a good idea only if you also simultaneously, or perhaps first, tackle the Prevention of Corruption Act. Now, you said earlier in another context you intend to do it, but you need to ensure that chairmen of banks have the confidence to sell their NPAs cheaply and take a haircut to ARCs without getting struck by the PCA. Will you ensure that happens?
Yes, we've already brought the law in. The law was referred by the Parliament to a select committee. report is expected any day. I hope this session we can clear.
Because your ARCs will only be effective and meaningful when that change happens.
We very well understand that, which is why we amended this law, which has been in the statute for 60 so many years.
One last question, and it's to do with the retrospective taxation. I noticed that Mr. Jaitley spent a lot of time and emphasis, even sometimes passion in his budget, reassuring people that there will be no retrospective taxation ever again. This government will never do it. The problem is many investors, not just abroad, but last night many in India on television said this is just another promise. And politicians only make promises, they say, to break them. The problem is, why not revoke and reverse the damage Pranab Mukherjee did in 2012? He did it via a budget.
That would be another retrospective amendment, Karan.
No.
We can't do a retrospective amendment now to the law as it stands.
Only because you want to bind your hands, but this retrospective amendment, would actually clear the doubts in people's minds. And you can do it through the budget. You've got 282. You'd have no constraint.
It's not a question of the numbers. Of course, Mr. Chidambaram had the numbers also, otherwise he should have resigned and left from office. So that's a very lame duck argument that he has given. I think the fact of the matter is this law has been passed. It's brought in 2012. Unfortunately, at that point of time, the sane advice was that it should have been withdrawn. It was not. Mr. Chidambaram has been finance minister for 2 years after that. He didn't do it.
But Mr. Jaitley came in from a different party, and it's so much easier to revoke bad legislation.
It's not a question of party. The law stands, and now any changes would mean another retrospective amendment, which we are committed not to doing. However, the fair proposition is that since the law now demands that tax to be paid, but the understanding of the law, even the Supreme Court had interpreted that it was not payable. So we said that the taxpayers are not at fault for not having paid it, so interest and penalties should not be charged to them.
Yes, but Vodafone, from what's reported in the papers today, are not enthused by that offer.
Maybe you got that report. I read it in the paper, but let's see.
The point is you're asking people who've been unfairly taxed in the first instance to accept the demand. You're simply waiving the interest and penalty, and they're saying the demand itself is wrong.
Well, the unfair part is a grey area. After all, the High Court had ruled in one fashion.
The Supreme Court ruled in their favor, and twice.
So therefore,
and you then had to retrospectively change.
Therefore, the ideal situation would have been the earlier erstwhile government should have rectified their own mistakes.
But if they didn't, why don't you?
We are committed not to do any retrospective.
But are you committed to carrying on an injustice of the last government? Because that's what you're putting us into doing.
Well, we are trying to reduce that injustice of the last government to the extent that was in our hands, that penalty and interest should not be charged. But I don't see any possibility.
I put it to you that it is in your hands to retrospectively amend this particular thing, and the country would applaud you because a doubt remains.
So a retrospective amendment which benefits somebody is applauded by the person.
Because the original retrospective amendment was an injustice which you acknowledge.
One can keep going back and saying that the original law meant otherwise and it was misinterpreted. So we are not going down that path. Our effort is to resolve all disputes of a variety of nature that are there in the country and bring in some sanity in the system.
All right, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to turn to certain other aspects of this budget which are not controversial, but they're intriguing, and they suggest something about the new thinking of this government, and that in particular I want to explore with you. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and an interview with Power and Coal Minister Piyush Goyal. Minister, let's now come to certain aspects of this budget which are not just intriguing, but they also suggest how this government views the economy. Now, I noticed that the Finance Minister has permitted 100% FDI for the marketing of food products produced in India. Is this FDI in retail by a small back door? Because many people think that's what it is.
Not at all. It's only FDI for the farmers' produce. So it's for the food processing industry, and the product has to be 100% manufactured in India.
But you see,
so we are not at all encouraging and allowing foreign goods into the country, which was the bone of contention.
But I understand you're not allowing foreign goods into the country, but you're permitting 100% foreign direct investment into this area. And food products produced in India is not just fresh food, it's processed food, it's packaged food, it's any type of food, including tin food.
Incidentally, that was always allowed.
But now you've got 100% FDI. That's the important change.
For processed food, because we want the farmers' income to increase. We want farmers' output to increase. Hence my question,
is this FDI in retail through a small back door? Is it beginning?
So. The FDI multi-brand retail that we had opposed earlier was entirely different. It was all sorts of products. It was under one brand.
But you never reversed the UPA policy consciously and deliberately.
Because we have already on record that we will not bring in retrospective amendments. But it's for the states to decide, and I don't think I see many states looking at that.
No doubt. But I just wonder whether the BJP has opened a small door. You're permitting 100% FDI in food marketing. Is this a first step towards further FDI in multi-brand retail?
I don't think so. I think the intention behind this is very pious. It's very transparent. We are looking at the farmers' produce getting an added value and seeing better income.
But you did begin by saying twice, I don't think so. So it's possible it could be.
Well, you can play around with words better than anybody else, Karan. But one will have to then calibrate every sentence.
Let me come to a second aspect of this budget which has intrigued many people. It certainly intrigued me. The tax on cigarettes and tobacco products has gone up between 10 and 15%. The tax on BDs hasn't altered at all. It's unchanged. And I ask myself, is this because you think BDs are safer and you want to incentivize the smoking of BDs, or do you not care about the health of BD smokers?
No, we certainly care about everybody's health. But this is a cottage industry. It affects large amount of employment in the rural areas. And I don't think this was the time to cause any more stress in the rural areas for the BD workers.
I understand that. And when Pranab Mukherjee, I believe, as finance minister, once tried it, he had to actually go back on it and revoke it for the very reason you're talking about. But, and this is the telling point, 8 times more people smoke BDs than cigarettes. 40% of all cigarette and tobacco consumption is by way of BD. So if you're really concerned about health, don't worry about the jobs you lose. Worry about the people who are smoking BDs. Now, every year it becomes cheaper and cheaper in comparison. You're encouraging them to smoke it, and their health will suffer. And BDs are worse than cigarettes. I think for that we'll run a
separate campaign to make sure that we can take the message of people stopping smoking even more aggressively. Good suggestion I get from you. We'll take this as an aggressive campaign going forward.
I get the feeling that's not the case. The real case is that cigarette smoking is addictive, as is BD, but you know that if you keep taxing cigarette smokers, they'll keep paying, and you're using, or rather, if I can use that word without offending you, exploiting their addiction to make money.
But there's no harm in that. There's no harm in exploiting the smoker.
And you're honest enough to admit it.
But what's the harm in doing that?
Let me come to a third aspect of the budget, and it's a concern that's erupted all day today. Literally, 24 hours after the budget was passed, the government has spent all day either clarifying or some people say rolling back the announcements about tax on EPF. Doesn't this clearly suggest that either that section, the tax on EPF, was poorly thought through, or at least it was poorly worded in the budget? One or the other it has to be.
Well, it had a noble intention. We believe that India should move towards a pension society. We believe social security has been something which is lacking from people's lives for so many years. We brought out the Atal Pension Yojana and the 2 insurance schemes.
But behind the noble intention, was it poorly thought through or poorly worded?
I don't think so. I think...
you love that word, I don't think so, don't you?
Maybe Takya Kalam hai. But I think the press note has come out today. It's in public domain, in which they've clarified that A, the public provident fund is not coming under the purview of this. A. B, even in the employees provident fund, those who are getting below the threshold limit of 15,000 rupees per month, their money on and cash is also
wasn't clarified yesterday, hence I asked.
Because the whole detail may not have come out in the
finance. It's such a critical thing. It's such a critical thing.
No, it became critical because I think the anchors didn't find anything beyond that to criticize.
No,
otherwise it was
not just anchors. Even the Secretary General of the BMS, your affiliated trade union, has been critical.
By the way, I called him up in the evening to say what was the problem. He said, "Ye kya kar diya?" When I explained to him, he said, "Acha aisa tha." So हमें ध्यान नहीं आया, हमें समझ नहीं।
ये तो मानिए, by not revealing the full truth, was it badly worded, the speech?
Oh, come on now. In the speech, you don't give the nitty-gritties of a impending legislation or law. All that we had planned was that those who pay above 15,000 rupees on employees' provident fund only, for them, 40% will be tax exempt if they commuted and take the whole amount. For the balance 60 also, we want to encourage them to put it into an annuity so that they can continue to get pension all through their life, and the corpus is available always.
Can I say
That's the only change we have made.
Can I say this?
And we've aligned NPS and PPF on the same footing.
Can I say this? If you had said, or rather if Mr. Jaitley had said yesterday what you're saying to me today, there'd have been no confusion. It was the fact that he didn't say it, that he ended up giving the different impression and the wrong impression, which means that today you had to backtrack and clarify.
No. So confusion solved. No big deal, no harm done. It's unfortunate that yesterday, immediate reactions, none of us had read the whole budget. We were on television within 10 minutes of the budget being read out. So
My last
in the
question.
night we got time to really read the budget.
My last question, and it's to do with the concern that many industrialists were expressing on television last night, many have written about in the papers today. They ask themselves, as they try to understand the budget, what are the specific steps Mr. Jaitley has taken to kickstart private sector investment? Overall, there are lots of little things that will do it, but are there specific key steps in that direction?
You know, I have observed that there's never a single step that can give you transformational results. Transformation happens when there's a transformation in several aspects, and I've seen that in my own power sector. Unless I resolve 25 issues, I can't look at a transformation.
So cumulatively the budget does it.
And the bottom line, yesterday Rahul Bajaj and all the industrialists were delighted at the fact that the purchasing power of the people and rural spending will be encouraged, which will itself help them to use their capacities, spare capacities, and encourage them to invest.
What about startups? It was the new big slogan coined by Mr. Modi just a couple of months ago. There are many who say that actually for startups there isn't very much in this budget at all, and the promises that have been made, like for instance 100% profit deductibility in 3 out of 5 years. They said startups don't make profits for many years, so this is a valueless promise. The other promise made about investors being eligible for long-term capital gains treatment, investors don't want to pull out after 2 years. So both these promises are there on paper, but startups say they're of no use to us.
Well, if that is so, we'll certainly have a look at what the startups will require to help them help their ecosystem improve. But I think the fact that we are looking at investing in those startups through the fund, we are looking at banks lending to these startups in an enabling environment where they're not questioned afterwards if a startup goes bust. The fact that we are encouraging through Mudra scheme, the smaller people, the smaller entrepreneurs, the fact that in many of our policies, we are trying to introduce the concept of having, for example, solar.
The key thing you're saying is even if this is not enough, you're prepared to do more, you're prepared to look at it again.
Sure, this government doesn't have any ostrich approach on anything. We are always willing to learn, evolve, improve, and that's how we've been so successful.
In which case, my very last question, and it's to do not with the budget, it's to do with people's expectation of legislation being passed in Parliament. Now, today itself, Parliament didn't function. You know that there's a problem with the opposition over Arunachal Pradesh, over Rohit Vemula, over JNU. Are you worried that once again, not just GST, but the bankruptcy bill, the real estate bill may stall? Because if that happens, the chair the budget has created will diminish or at least dim pretty quickly.
Well, we've been assured by all sections of the House, and so has the Honourable Chairman, because this is a problem which is more in the Rajya Sabha, that after the discussions on all of these issues are done with, they will cooperate to help clear at least the bills which are of very major economic importance or major importance to the people of India. We are very confident. We shall continuously engage with the opposition. We are ready to talk to them. We are ready to discuss every and any issue in Parliament. We are very confident that we will get all of these things moving.
Including GST?
However, I hope GST also happens. However, God forbid if they are just out hell-bent to destroy the country's economic growth and progress and development, if they are wanting this government to fail on the economic front because of stalling their laws, let me reassure the nation through you and your channel that this government will deliver on all our promises. If the law on a particular aspect does not get passed, we'll look at an alternate route to get the thing sorted out. But this government is committed to delivering on all of our promises.
That's very reassuring. The only problem is there isn't an alternate route to deliver GST.
I think there is, and
there is.
Let us wait and watch what happens in this.
You're ending on a very intriguing note. What is the alternate route to deliver GST?
It'll need a longer session than the 2 minutes you have left on the debate.
But you genuinely believe it? This is not...
Yes, I genuinely believe that even... I do wish they would approve it. A lot of water has flown under the bridge. Years of efforts, both of the UPA, NDA, 29 chief ministers and their teams. A lot of work has gone behind it. We should give it our best shot. But I can reassure the nation on behalf of our government that we stand committed to each one of our programs, each one of our promises.
Piyush Goyal, a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
This happens only in India and again and again. This is one more example of lawmakers caught on camera shaming their profession.
पैसे वाले बाबू मेरा बजट बना दो, पैसे वाले बाबू मेरा बजट बना दो, बजट बना दो, बजट बना दो। पैसे वाले मेरा बजट